Part 8.2, Servlet Configuration. All right. First, let's look at a deployment descriptor. Yeah. So we mainly use deployment descriptor. Yeah. Last time I mentioned a two-way to configure servlets: explicit way and implicit way. Yeah. And using deployment descriptor, that's the explicit way. Okay. Yeah, explicit way. And implicit way, actually in our first hello world example, we used the implicit way. Yeah. Because we didn't do anything inside the deployment descriptor. So that is the web.xml. This file, configuration file, deployment descriptor. Yeah. We didn't do anything. Yeah. But the server does it. So we cannot see it. So that's why we call it implicit. Yeah. The role of deployment descriptor, how the application should be deployed. Yeah. So you use the XML file. Yeah. So usually we, follow the examples. So first we learn, so how other people do the configuration. Yeah. So after we learn, we understand. So the next time we do the same way. Yeah. It can configure listeners, servlets, filters, and more. Here we focus on servlets. Okay. Later we will look at filters, listeners. These two things all come from servlets. Servlets, this technology is the foundation of everything else. Okay. So servlets, the foundation technology. Then many other technologies build on top of the servlets. Okay, yeah, so that's why we need to study this foundation part well. Yeah. All right. Yeah, so another question is, we can configure multiple instances of a servlet. Multiple instances. Usually one web application, for one servlet, we only need to create one instance. Why you need to create multiple instances? Multiple instances, right? Yeah. So usually we use one instance of a servlet for the whole web application. One instance is enough. Yeah. But there are some special situations you may need more than one instances, but that's rare. Yeah, that's rare. Yeah. For this topic, because at this point, if I talk about that, you may not understand well. I like to delay this multiple instance details when we have a little more knowledge. Yeah. So here, let me just delay a little bit. Later, I will find a chance to explain why people need multiple instances, right? Yeah. All right. One instance, but it can provide services for many users concurrently. Yes. Many users concurrently. Yeah. So the way it generates multiple threads. Here, the servlet uses multi-threading technique. Multi-threading. Yeah. So one instance can automatically generate multiple threads. We don't need to do anything. Yeah. So that's the internal setup. So that's why we use the special servlet class. So the servlet class has a lot of, nice functionalities. We cannot see those functionalities, but, in your Java web application, all those nice functionalities will be used automatically. Yeah. So this is what multi-threading, to serve the clients. Yeah. All right. Another thing is map multiple URLs to the same servlet. Sometimes you may need it. Yeah. At this point, you may not know why people need it, right? For the same servlet, why we need to use different URLs? But in your web application, in some special situation, you may need it. Yeah. So there is one servlet doing a lot of different data processing. Okay? Yeah. Then, in different situations, some of the situations look little different, but they just call the same servlet, right? So then you use different URL patterns to separate slightly different situations, but at the end, they need to call the same servlet to do the data processing. Yeah. So that's the, some possibility. Yeah. Yeah. So we can see in our next a few slides, we can see, so how do we do it? Yeah. Now, explicit servlet configuration inside the web.xml. Yeah. Here, let me just use a simple example in web.xml. Yeah. First, you need to write your servlet element in your web.xml, servlet element. Inside your servlet element, you need to provide your servlet name. Each servlet, you should give a name to it. Servlet name. The reason, very simple, because inside the server, all these servlets, JSPs, all those things, each one needs a reference. The servlet name is used as the internal reference. Internally, and also externally, we sometimes use servlet names, but most of the time we do not use. Most of the time we do not use. So the servlet name, servlet class, you have to provide that. What is the, concrete class you use as this servlet? And this configuration create a mapping between servlet name and servlet class, one-to-one mapping. The name must be unique. The name must be unique. But if the name the same, think about that. First, the name must be unique. But, so we come back to the instance case. If we create another servlet element, another servlet element, then we give a new name, a different name, new name. But associated with a same class. In that way, you create second instance. Look at this multiple instance, right? So you use the same class, but you give a new name. You give a new name, same class. Then you create a new instance. Yeah. One name corresponds to one instance. Okay, one instance. New name, yeah, new instance. Yeah. So that's the way you create a new instance. Yeah. All right. Next. Other than the servlet element, you need to define your servlet-mapping element. Doing the mapping, URL mapping. So this is also important. Yeah. To configure a servlet, you need these two elements. Two elements. Yeah. In this mapping, you refer to your original servlet name. Yeah. So here you can see this is the reason we need to give a name to the servlet. Because later, when we need to connect to that servlet, we use its name as the reference. Yeah. Then URL pattern. Yeah. Yeah. After that, you can use the servlet. Yeah. All right. Here, create a servlet instance. Yeah. So this element does that. Yeah. Map servlet to URL, doing this one-to-one mapping. Yeah. But later we will see, remember, multiple URLs. We can do this one-to-many mapping. Okay? Yeah. Because we may want to use the same servlet on different URLs, so you can add a few more URLs here. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah. All right. Then another concept I mentioned last time, logical name. We call this URL pattern logical name of the servlet. Why? I explained a little bit last time what is the logical name. Why the logical name? Because inside a web application, you cannot find a directory called hello. You cannot. Yeah. When you visit this, so remember, how do we call this servlet? We do this. http://localhost 8080 Tomcat standard port number, then hello world, right? So our web application called hello world. Then call servlet hello. All right, so that's how we call our servlet. But this hello, inside a web application, you cannot find any item corresponds to this hello. Okay? You cannot find a directory called hello. You cannot find a file called hello. So that's why we say it is a logical name of the servlet. Logically, we use it, but physically, no such thing. Yeah. All right. Now map multiple URLs to one servlet. Yeah. For this one, I show you two ways to do it. Yeah. Although we rarely use it, but in case if we need it, we can do it. Yeah. Example, yeah. So here we map 3 URL patterns to the same servlet. Same URL pattern, 3 URL patterns to the same servlet. Yeah, you just copy a few lines, you can do it. Yeah, very easy. Yeah. Next, we look at another way to do it. Yeah. All right. Next, annotation type configuration. This is the second type configuration. A little easier than the first type. First type is this type. The second type, a little easier than the first one. So that's why many Java programmers like this second way. So that's our implicit way. Yeah. you write less code. Okay? You write a minimum code, but you do the same thing. Yeah. All right. But for this annotation, the whole annotation technology, yeah, I need to use some videos. Yeah. So because this topic is not easily covered in just a few slides. This topic, I may need to use probably 2 videos to cover this annotation technology topic. Yeah, at least one relatively long video to cover it. Yeah. So the annotation type. So you can add an annotation just above servlet declaration for configuration. Yeah. In your servlet class name, above that line, you can put some annotation to do the straightforward configuration. Then it works. If you do that in your web.xml, you don't need all these things. Yeah. So that can make your web application look simpler. Yeah. That's the implicit configuration. Yeah. All right. For example, in our hello world, we only need one line like this. That's it. At web server, this is annotation. Okay, annotation. Then, what URL pattern do we use? That's the URL pattern. That's it. Okay? URL mapping is done, right? Yeah. Look at another example. More information we can provide in the configuration. At servlet, so this time we do more configuration. First, we can configure the servlet. In that simple version, we do not configure servlet name, right? We do not assign our own servlet name. In that case, it uses the default servlet name. There is a default servlet name by default. Yeah, we will see that soon. Yeah. All right, so now this is non-default, our new servlet name. Other than that, URL pattern, if you only need one, you just provide one. If you need more than one, yeah, you just use curly braces to represent your URL pattern strings as a string array. So this is a string array. Okay, this whole thing inside curly braces, string array. So that's the way you do the configuration. Okay, so you can see, compare it with our old way, this way is simpler. Yeah, so that's why actually most of the Java programmers, they like this annotation way configuration. Okay, yeah. Later we will compare these 2 ways, advantages, disadvantages. Yeah. So that is an important topic. Yeah. Compare web.xml way configuration and the annotation way configuration. Yeah. All right. Then default servlet name. Yeah. I mentioned that default servlet name. So here we see that. Internal name used for servlet, reference the servlet. So here, it's internal name. Yeah. The server uses it internally most of the time. Yeah. We programmers, we rarely use these names. Yeah. Internal name is the same as the class name of the servlet. Your servlet has a class, that class name, right? The class name, do not use the package path. That part we do not use. Yeah, just the class name. Then that is the internal default servlet name. Yeah. All right. So that's our second video.